Bombshell Brunches, where your hosts Raquel Rudenberg and Kristina Lau sip and spill with badass babes every Tuesday morning.
Good morning. It is my absolute pleasure. We've just spent the last 5 minutes laughing continuously, but it is now, we're getting very serious now because hypnotherapy is a serious thing for serious people, right, Larry?
Absolutely.
Yes.
No laughing.
Yes, no laughing. No laughing allowed. So it is my great pleasure to introduce you to the man who literally saved my life, and my current career coach, the genius behind all of my awesomeness, I would say, one of the few geniuses, you know, but for all intents and purposes, the most important one, because he's right here. Larry Butler founded Trance-formation centers in December of 2006 with one goal in mind: to provide the most powerful and effective solution we could to allow individuals who wanted a new life to become non-smokers for the rest of their lives. People wanted more, and we realized that the past does not have to define the future. So with this in mind, Larry Butler and Trance-formation centers expanded their services using hypnosis and other modalities to enable clients to create possibilities they had previously thought impossible. I can personally attest to the fact that Larry is not bad at what he does. Having personally spent, and for those of you who don't know me that well yet, and some of you who do, 18 years smoking 20 to 40 cigarettes a day. And we can talk about that when we get to that stage. But when I got in touch with Larry, I don't know if you remember Larry, because it was all those years ago, back when we were both spring chickens. I was coughing up blood, and I had said to Larry, there was a form that I had to fill in that said, "Why do you want to stop?" And I said, I actually don't, and I'm very sorry to say that I don't want to stop. I'm now ready to die. I have spent so much time and energy trying. I spent 10 years of those 18 trying to stop smoking with various different ways, almost every available opportunity that you could have to stop smoking. I tried twice, and I said, I've given up. But the only reason I'm contacting you is because I cannot cope with the idea of my mother having to bury me, so I have to keep trying. And he said, that's all we need. And now, unfortunately, the world has to continue to endure me because of you, Larry. This is your fault. So basically, it's your fault.
Everything's my fault.
Blame Larry Butler.
That's what this really is about.
That's right. See, just look at my license plate. That's what it says.
So, Larry, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. In this very quiet, serious conversation.
That's right.
Extremely
That's right.
serious.
Yes, very serious. Okay, just give people, I know your background, but give people a bit of a background. Like, how did you grow up in all of your many ways? Because I love the Larry story of all the many different facets of Larry life. And how did you get into hypnotherapy?
Okay. So back, child, I worked in my grandparents' store, and were ladies' cotton house dresses, which probably most of this audience will not know what a ladies' cotton house dress is. We used to make them in the back, sound the front. So I was a whiz on the sewing machine and the cutting machines and stuff like that. And spent a lot of time in the ladies' wear business. And then did a few other things, as most people do. Did audiovisual productions, of which I knew nothing about, but created some really neat productions. Did insurance for a while, and then became a business consultant and had a giftware wholesale business. And then I was doing some BCIT. I created a whole bunch of workshops for them. And then I, on a whim, as doing business consulting, I went to see how to do hypnosis, which I had no interest in. I just went to hang out with a friend of mine down in California. And after we just, we could do this. So we were going to start this business together. And he did one client and bailed on me. And all of a sudden I got an office and the rest is history. So I just started doing originally just smoking cessation. Quite frankly, I didn't want to do anything else. And for a couple of years, every time someone wanted something else, I said, no, I don't do that. And then I made that huge mistake that we all make someday, where I said, well, maybe just this one time. And I screwed up a very easy business and got to do a whole bunch of other things and having to go and learn a lot of stuff. I say that tongue in cheek, of course, because I love what I do. And getting people like yourself who thought it was absolutely impossible to stop smoking to realize it's very easy to stop smoking.
So how does it work? How does hypnotherapy work?
Well, so hypnosis, I like to think of it as hypnosis, okay? Because hypnosis is one thing, therapy is another. Okay. And I'm very careful to say I'm not a therapist. My wife is a therapist, and I go into her realm at all. It's not a pretty sight. It's not a pretty sight. Trust me on that one. So, but with hypnosis, basically what's happening in hypnosis is we're just accessing our unconscious mind. What most people don't know is that everything we do really that's repetitive, it's done by our unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind is far more powerful than our conscious mind. I like to say our conscious mind is a very puny mind. They say it'll hold 5 to 7 thoughts plus or minus 2. I have no idea who figures this out, okay? It's a good story, okay? Pretty puny, so which basically means if you start doing something and then you add another thing and another thing, pretty soon if you get too far, you have to drop something and that's where, what was I doing? Oh yeah, I meant to do this. You can all relate to that, right? I started out doing something, I got sidetracked and I forgot what I was going to do in the first place. Because that's that puny conscious mind. Unconscious mind, they say, will hold 2 million thoughts plus or minus whatever. I don't know who figures that out either. But basically what it means is that it has unlimited capacity. And the difference between the two minds is one is a thinking, rational mind, that's the conscious mind, the puny one. The other one is the literal thinking mind. And the problem is once it gets comes into a thought literally, it doesn't know how to change it. That's why we repetitively do something. Most people can respond to this when they think about something they do and they say, I'm never going to do that again. Next thing they know, they're doing it. Oh, I wasn't going to do that again. And they're doing it. Because that unconscious mind thinks that it's what is in the best benefit of the person. Because at some point, everything we took on, every thought we had a positive intention. Even the worst thing. I mean, I use smoke. We're talking about smoking. Let's use that as an example, okay? You have that first cigarette and it tastes horrible, right? But in that moment, for the person, there was something positive. Either they felt grown up, they were a rebel, they wanted to be one of the group or whatever it is. And so because of that, they decide to have another cigarette because they want that same feeling again. And then they have another and another and another. While that's going on, the unconscious mind is watching this conscious mind, and it realizes that, oh, this is what the person wants. Okay, this is what Larry wants. So we're going to take over that job for him. And that's when it became difficult to quit, because rather than being a conscious, rational choice, it became an unconscious habit. Okay? And it's why we have so much difficulty getting rid of it, because it's just hanging back there. And that unconscious mind believes it's in its best interest to keep us a smoker, because it doesn't have any way of changing that mind. With hypnosis, we go into a trance state. And when we go into a trance state, all we're doing really is slowing down our brainwave patterns. And it allows us to access that unconscious mind. And once we access that, we can get it to see that it's not doing its job, which is out of protection. It's actually hurting us. And it will automatically change and come up with something better. And that's when we stop smoking. So it goes from that, like this pounding thing, like I've got to get rid of this, I've got to get rid of this, to with our conscious mind versus our unconscious. Now both sides are working together and the job's pretty much done. That's a simple explanation of it.
Yeah, so easy.
Yeah.
And Raquel, I don't know if you ever were a smoker, but for me, I can't, for anyone who is a smoker, number one, zero judgment. I'm very, very careful to say, with people who are smoking, everyone has their reasons. Everyone will find their way however possible. I wish you, all the best in looking and in finding what succeeds for you whenever you're ready to. But there's so much shame around not being able to counter that, not being able to, what Larry and I, what did we talk about for so long? It was like, I know that I'm a high functioning person. I'm super ambitious. This is so embarrassing. It's so shameful. It's so, it destroys you. It's this thing that for me, it destroyed me. I don't know how other people feel, but we had to work through that. And one of the things that I use to describe when I talk about the experience is it was like I spent 10 years looking for the right door. And Larry, did you tell me this? Was this your idea that you put in my brain that you said that you said to, not in a hypnotherapy way, when we were having a conversation, I think, did you ever describe hypnotherapy as that, as just helping somebody find the right door? Or did I make that up in my mind?
Well, it sounds pretty good. I'll take credit for that. That was your mind. But it's great. But that is an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
It's finding the right door. And once I had that door, I could walk through it. And I mean, it's coming up on, what is it? July the 8th is my 6-year anniversary.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And so how does it work with Trance-formation centers? Because you have a service guarantee that's pretty incredible.
Well, with my smoking thing, I always had a lifetime service guarantee that basically said if the person ever went back to smoking at any time for any reason, they could come back. There was no time limit, no additional charge. And the beauty of that was two things. One, it really took the pressure off people. Okay, to get so that it's kind of like having a safety net. One of the things though about a guarantee, because we're good at what we do, is you never want to give a guarantee you're going to pay off on. Right? I mean, I don't care what you guarantee. You don't ever want to pay a guarantee. So I'm good at what I do, and so we can do that. And the other thing it was, for me anyway, it was really wanting to work with people to get the outcome they wanted. Okay? And that was the most important thing, whatever it was. So it wasn't just as someone said, it's not a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, I'm out of here. Okay? It was, look, if you got a problem, come back and we'll deal with it. And it doesn't happen very often. And I think that one of the reasons that it's so successful too is that it takes the fear away. What if I don't? What if I don't? What if this doesn't work? Because most people that I work with, the vast majority have tried just a lot of things to stop smoking, and none of them have worked. Okay. And so there's that thing. Why would this work? Why would this be any different? Okay. And this just takes the pressure off. So.
I also want to highlight a wonderful comment that you made, Larry, a while back, where some people say, I've got too strong a mind, I can't be hypnotized. Tell me that story.
Well, okay. Well, and I mean, that's one of the big things, and I just love people with really strong minds. Okay. Because as I was saying to Raquel, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. We put ourselves into trance. All I do is act as a guide. Okay. And there's a couple of reasons or ways that people who cannot be hypnotized. One is if you have an IQ below 70. And basically that's because you don't have the ability to focus. And I love the people that say, or if you're on antipsychotic drugs or that type of thing, generally you can't be hypnotized. I think that you probably could do hypnosis on someone with a lower IQ, but you'd be doing a lot of extra work. And so that's the things. And I have people that say, well, I can't be hypnotized. I say, why do you say that? I say, I'm too smart. And I just laugh because, of course, anyone that's very smart, the more intelligent you are, the easier it is to go into trance because you have the ability to focus. One of the examples I had of that was I worked with a guy that was a SEAL, a Navy SEAL in the States. And so he came to see me and he was concerned that he would be able to go into trance because he had been trained not to be able to go into trance, basically, okay, to be stand torture and all that kind of stuff. So he had a very strong, powerful mind that he could withstand just about anything. And of course, I just knew this was fine. I said, well, we'll just see how it works. And of course, he dropped like a rock because he had the ability to focus. He has this ability to focus, right? And that's all he had to do. And he knew what he was doing was something he wanted to do, not something he didn't want to do. So that's the biggest thing. So virtually anyone can go into trance, or someone who doing the other thing that gets in the way if they don't want to. You know,
How suggestible are people in that moment? Because I was saying before we got on air that I have control issues, so I'm terrified of getting hypnotized because
Yeah.
I want to be in control. So
Yeah.
how susceptible are people in that moment?
Okay, so the big thing is not really. Well, yes and no. Okay, is the answer. Are we susceptible? Yes. Are we not susceptible? Yes. It depends on what the suggestion is. Okay, so the big thing that comes up, we see stage shows. Pretty well everyone's seen a stage show, and you get to see people that are just making fools of themselves, and no one would do that in their right mind, right? But you got to think about it for a minute. First of all, no one ends up at a stage show for hypnosis without knowing what it's about. Okay. Thing the hypnotist does is they ask for volunteers. So who's going to volunteer? Well, people who want to be part of the show. And then he's actually trying to check who's susceptible. More than what he's doing is who wants to be part of the show? Who wants to go along with everything that's happening and wants to do this? And sometimes they'll send people away because it's not a good fit. Then they put them in, and then you see people doing ridiculous things, right? But if you see enough of them, every now and then you see someone who's doing just outrageous things, all of a sudden is asked to do something that's pretty simple. Okay, and they won't do it. And what's happened in that case is they've been asked to do something that's outside of, I'll call their moral equivalency, okay? But just something that's outside of what they're prepared to do. And so one of two things happen. Either they come right out of trance, or they just stay in trance, but they just don't do it. So you can't be made to do, but what it shows, or what we think is happening, is people can be made to do what they don't want to do. And that's not actually accurate. You see it in movies, it's great. Books, it's great, okay? But in real life, no.
What? I was doing all of that stuff of my own volition, Larry?
Oh, yeah, and the movies were so good. I had so much fun watching them, yeah.
What I wanted to do was bring that back to the follow-up session after you do the smoking cessation, because that's how Larry ended up getting involuntarily stuck with me, I should say.
For years.
For years, literally.
I know. I am such a saint. I am a legend in my own mind. I am a household name in my own home. It's exciting. Sorry, you were saying.
I was trying to pay you a compliment. Thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you.
So what happened was I went back for a follow-up, and it was, and Larry was like, you come back, we'll have a chat. I'll just remind you that you don't really need to be there for the follow-up, but it's nice to catch up. And he just kind of didn't put any emphasis on it. So imagine being so gripped by this nicotine monster, so terrified that I won't be able to stop. 1.5 hours or whatever it was with Larry, I can't remember how much time it was. I left there and didn't smoke, didn't feel the way that I felt towards smoking cessation, I had an entirely different feeling. I don't remember all of what was happening during the hypnotherapy, because some and other hypnotherapy sessions we've had, I've remembered absolutely everything. Things come and go. You kind of, it's a different experience for every individual, and it's different every time. But I came back and I remember sitting there and saying, okay, now I have defeated the biggest vice of my life. Now I need to take over everything and learn how to be super awesome, 100%, ramp up my efficiency. And then we did this beautiful hypnotherapy called The Wall. And I want to, Larry, I want you to talk about where that came from and a little bit about it, because that is the type of hypnotherapy that to me is about performance.
Okay, so it's a process I use called The Wall, which I did not create. It was created by, actually, I'm not totally sure who. I learned it from Melissa Roth, who was one of my teachers, phenomenal woman down in Alabama. And basically, this is an example of how hypnosis can work. And that particular one that we do is, most of us, when we're not getting what we want in life, it's like we have a wall that's blocking us, something that's stopping us. And in this particular process is getting the person to, in trance, to imagine the wall and imagine what the wall means to them. And when I do this particular process, I do it very generically, so I'm not putting any suggestions into the person's mind. And so when they're looking at it, they get to see whatever we're trying to work on, what it is that's getting in the way, and then helping them with direction to find a way to get really clear about that, to find a way to now get around the wall or over the wall or break it down or whatever, different things. It doesn't really matter what they do, and see what's on the other side and see this bright, wonderful future that they want, this path leading to everything that they want, whatever is in their mind. And I have no idea what's going on. It's different for different people. And that's one of the powers of hypnosis is working with our unconscious mind, because that's what's blocking things, right? And to go into this unconscious part of the mind and say, okay, what is blocking this? What are you doing here? Recognizing that everything it's trying to do has a positive intention, and it got put there by ourselves with a positive intention, and it made sense in the moment, in the time, but it got stuck there, and it just keeps rearing its ugly head, and we don't even know that, but it's the thing that keeps us going back to our old patterns and our own beliefs. Once we can break through that, then we have the option of we can always go back, but we now have the option of saying, oh, I can do this a different way. You know, I don't have to do the same patterns over and over again. I can change my patterns into something that's far more beneficial to me.
Kristina, can you give an example, like a concrete example of how that felt with the shift, and maybe something specifically that you were able to shift with that method?
Yes, Larry often will give you the recording as well, so that you can do the same thing repeatedly. And I do the wall every 3 or 4 months now, just because I find it a really lovely kind of setup. It's almost like setting an intention. So to give you a real kind of experience, for me, when I did it, I can't remember what the words were on the wall for the first time, but I remember seeing a picture of my future version of myself. I had short hair like this. I had a black turtleneck on like this, like that I am currently wearing. Yeah. I was slimmer. I was about as slim as I am now. This was 5-6 years ago. I was confident. I was, very, very, I felt very powerful. What had happened is we went into this trance, and I had I felt like I had enough space, I guess retrospectively when I'm reflecting, I had enough space to see the kind of future and the kind of person that I wanted to be. And when I was doing it with Larry, I didn't know what that was going to look like. So I created enough space. And then whether you're a spiritual or religious person or however you want to describe it, I allowed for divinity or any kind of divine intervention or spiritual intervention to participate. And I was imagining, whether it's imagining or not, a future where I was my best version of myself. And you know how we've had a previous guest on, Donna, who says, representation really matters. If you can't see it, it's so much harder to believe it. From that moment on, what I realized when the wall came up, because what happens is you do the wall and you take a little peek over and you see what could be. And then you look at the wall and you're like, well, what is it that's stopping me from getting from here to being that? And every time I've done it, it's been different words. Sometimes it's been literally the words just saying you are enough on the wall, and a belief that I had, a thing that I believed in that wasn't true or wasn't serving me or wasn't helpful anymore. And then you go through the process of breaking that wall down so that you have a clear path to whatever your version of fulfillment and success is. And so for me, what I really, really had been feeling was I was smoking, I was self-sabotaging, I was doing, things in my life that were not serving that best version of me. And so when I did the wall, for the first time in a really long time, with a sense of freedom, I got to see what my best version of me really did look like. And it allowed me to ground myself in the commitment to run towards it. And I kid you not, that same image of myself is still there every day when I wake up. I mean, I look more like that now than I mean, wouldn't you say, Larry? I mean, you didn't see it in my brain, but I kind of...
Well, I get the energetic part of it, though.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so what I realized was, I'm a very committed person to my personal development, but I'm also very well aware of what I don't know and what I can't do. And I'm a big fan of having great team members around you in every capacity. And with Larry, I was like, I know I'm capable. I just can't find the right doors. And he let me through the first door, which was 1, surviving, like living, and then 2, thriving. And we've been working on thriving ever since, haven't we?
Yeah.
Against your better judgment.
Absolutely. Why would I want to unleash this thing on the world?
Yeah, he says that very often. He's like, this is what I've done.
Yeah, so that's why I take full responsibility. Yeah, I take full responsibility, and I move every 6 months. No one can find me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Does that answer your question, Raquel? We've done others. Like but it's a very participatory experience with me and Larry. Like, I think, if I can just put words into Larry's mouth, because why not? He did say to me, I like working with you because you're committed to doing the work. You can't just sit back and be like, I don't want to be lazy anymore, and then go to a hypnotherapy and expect someone to do this heavy lifting for you. This is about you. This is about your commitment to your excellence, whatever that means to you.
Okay, so that brings me to let's bring it back to the smoking one, because I think that's it's really easy to visualize, or easier to visualize. So when you walked in, you had a certain feeling about it, and when you walked out, did you immediately feel that shift, or was that something that happened over time?
Yeah.
And how did it was there something that you remember shifting, or was it a belief that shifted, or was it just like you walked out feeling different?
So I've got to be very careful here, because I can tell you what I'm feeling and what I felt, but I will 100% caveat, and I think, Larry, I would be probably very wise to say this, that every single person's experience will be very, very different. So if you did the same thing as me, you're not me. You're not going to walk out feeling the same way at all. What I will, so I'm going to caveat it with that. But what I will say is that I walked in personally very, very fearful, but ready to trust Larry, because we'd had a conversation beforehand. I'd done my research. I trusted my instincts. I followed my guts, and I was like, this is the right person for me. And I'm not going to lie, the lifetime service guarantee was a really big thing, because I was like, again, it really it dispelled that fear, because I was like, well, here's someone who's that confident that it's going to be fine. And when I sat down with Larry, he was like, we only need an hour. And I was like, well, I don't trust this dude, but I don't believe you. But I mean, what have I got to lose? Right? I had nothing left. I can't even tell you. I hit it very well, but I had nothing left to lose. And so when I left, there was a point I remember everything. There are little reminders with hypnotherapy where you'll come out and Larry will be like, and by the way, everything will be redder than you think. Like, anything red, just to prove that we've done something and you've not just had a nap. You'll walk out into the street and you'll see, whatever cars that are red or things that are red, they'll just pop a little bit more for the first little bit. And I walked out and I was like, bastard. That's red and that's red. And I was like, it's brighter. The red was brighter. And it was just a little thing that, sometimes you just need that little reminder. You need to understand that your unconscious mind is so powerful, and you're not participating with it as much. We don't, as human beings, often participate as much as we can. So for me, that was how that felt for me. And when I came back a week later, I distinctly remember being, and Larry, you probably can't forget this either. I stormed into his office, and I was such a grumpy bastard. And I was just like, I'm upset. And he was like, welcome back. And I was like, making all these like, just having my own little pity party. Larry calls it a pity party. And so I was having my own little pity party. And he was like, so how are you feeling? And I was like, well, like shit. I feel like absolute shit. I hate this. I don't like it, blah, blah, blah. And I started ranting. And he was like, okay, have you had a cigarette? And I was like, no, Larry, that's not going to solve the problem. And then just carried on ranting. And he just sat there and was like, okay, so I'm just going to take a step back.
Let's just hit the rewind button.
You just you just said that you're not you don't think that the solution is smoking. And I was like, no, that's ridiculous. And then I stopped and I was like, that's ridiculous. Yeah, I don't smoke. That's not going to solve my problems. And it was the first time in my life that I had 100% been able to say, like, yeah, I'm feeling nicotine withdrawals, I'm feeling all this stuff, but that's not going to solve my problem. And not one time have I walked past a person and said, oh, I wish I was a smoker. You know how so many people say that? And again, my experience, just my experience. But so many people are like, oh, yeah, I quit smoking and I miss it every day. And I'm like, shut
I love
up.
The smell of it or something. Yeah.
And you know what? That if you like the smell of cigarettes, like, sure, okay. I also like the smell of chlorine. I'm not going to drink it. And so, when people say that, I think it's really, I had gotten that into my mind that when I stopped, I would have to suffer. And I had really started to steel myself to suffering. And this was the first time that I walked away and was like, oh, I don't smoke. I did.
Well, yeah. Well, the big thing is, and what we're doing, I talk about this of being really a change, a shift, okay? And it's what the term I use is the identity shift, because we change from being a smoker to being a non-smoker. So the behavior is irrelevant. And there's, people often talk, and I used to get really ticked off at Bill Good when he was on the air. He'd have people on with smoking cessation. And I remember him saying to the people, he says, I quit 20 years ago. I haven't had a cigarette. Every day he says, I want a cigarette. And the reason is he's a smoker. He's just not smoking, but he's still a smoker. In this case, what happened is an identity shift from going from being a smoker to a non-smoker. And as I say to people, and I say this to my clients, what's one thing a smoker always wants? Well, a cigarette. And what's one thing a non-smoker never wants? And I often get a glare, eyes glaze over, like, what's this all about? Okay. And it's not a trick question. It's a trick question. It isn't. And the answer is a cigarette, because they're not a smoker. And that's why hypnosis in terms of smoking cessation is head and shoulders above everything else that people try to do. And because it's really about changing that identity of ourselves. And I mean, we're talking about smoking, but that applies to all other aspects of life, in parts of our lives that aren't working. And there's tons of other procedures we work with on stuff, is really making that identity shift for people. It's what therapists help people do a lot, right? I don't, because I'm not a therapist. So if my wife ever watches this video, I just said I'm not a therapist. Keep myself out of trouble.
That's Tony's job.
That's Tony's job. But it is really but it's the essence of a lot of things, not only smoking, but all of the things that get in our way in our lives. Okay. The kind of, to go back to the wall, we keep hitting these walls. What's happening, And it's because we're trying to do it at a conscious level, and all of the things that are happening in our lives, that we're doing in our lives, are really at an unconscious level. And until we can get into that, and, we won't probably be talking about it today, but there's all of the other different types of things that we use, processes that we use to shift this belief we have in ourselves, the things we think are important, that somewhere along the line, we thought it was really important, right?
We do.
We're acting out of that. No one in this on this call, of course.
No.
Probably people out there that might relate to this.
Yes, friends are friends.
Yes, yes.
But tell us about some of these, because okay,
yeah, I want to know about the modalities.
we can use me as the guinea pig here. Let's be honest. I've done all of the things. I had a massive fear of death, didn't I, Larry? And we figured that out, and it was huge. How did we unpack that? How did we get to that, Larry?
Wait, can you just describe like what how does that manifest? What is a fear of death? What does that look like for you?
Okay, so for me, it was I had realized that I remember being a child and running into my mum's room and being like, I am so afraid that you're going to die. And she was like, don't be ridiculous. She listened, but she was like, it was just some kind of crazy belief. When I was very, very young, someone had been thrown out of the window in front, like stabbed 100 times and thrown out of the window in an apartment building that I lived in, like 2 floors up. And it was not a fun time. My experience with death was not good. And I apologize if that, for the unprecedented trigger that may have happened to some of you listening to that. But there were a lot of things that happened that caused me to feel very afraid that I would die, that the people I loved would die. And some of it, I just don't know. I just don't know what it was. But I recognized at some point through a lot of the work that I was doing with Larry, that a lot of my decisions were actually iterating in the form of zero-sum thinking and scarcity-based thinking, where I was living out of lack, and I was choosing to do things because I was afraid of the consequences rather than coming from a place of joy. And I was like, well, where is this coming from? And we talked about it, and we went down all these different rabbit holes, and I felt like what had happened was I did a lot of reading and research and work with Larry, and found that death was the common thing. I was fearing death. I was fearing losing people. I was fearing the concept. And so I said, let's do a process. And what did we do first? We did belief systems. We did tapping.
Yeah. Well, no, with that particular one, it's muscle testing.
Right.
Muscle testing is a bad word because it sounds like we're testing muscles, and some people may have known where you put your arm out and someone will push down on it and it'll be weak or it'll be strong depending on what you're asking. And basically what we're testing is energy, not muscles. And so this process is called the Psych-K. It was created by Rob Williams. And it's really the belief that we got 3 hours, right? So I'll short circuit through this. Anyway, the concept of it is that we carry these beliefs in our body energetically, okay, and we don't even know about it. And often people will say, well, I know what's wrong, and because they had a huge trauma in their life. And we can muscle test and find out, yeah, you had a real trauma in your life, but it's not affecting you energetically. And then we'll go with a really minor trauma that didn't mean anything, that people can't even remember, we'll discover. We'll muscle test that, and we find a very strong thing, which are very weak things, showing that they're weak to this, meaning that's the thing that's affecting them. And then going through a thing called a balance, you just balance that energy out, so that energy that's in there. So it's not about forgetting the experience. It's about letting go of the energy that's attached to the experience, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so with this one, it's actually going through a series of thoughts and questions, and then just muscle testing to see where is the body around this, and then just releasing that energy. And it's very quick to do, generally speaking, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you've got to do a lot of searching to find out what it is, but it's a process that is very effective. It's like voodoo times 10 because it doesn't make any sense. I've worked with people and I don't understand why any of this is working, except what I do know is a woman by the name of Lynn McTaggart wrote a book called The Field. And the basic concept of that is that there's a field of energy that surrounds the planet. And we're all connected to this energy. And so that because we're all connected to this energy, then everyone is connected to everyone else. Everything is connected to everything else. And so and it's all hanging out there. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too far. So it's actually in certainly in healings and in phobias and fears and stuff like that. It's balancing the body to not have that. A good example that I was working with a woman once, and we were going to do the hypnosis. I forget exactly what we were working on. And there was something, and I said, what's going on? And she said, well, she was really afraid because she has a fear of darkness. And her husband was going away and her kids were going away. She was going to be all alone in the house, and that had never happened to her in her life. And so on the way kind of to the chair to do the work we were going to do, I said, well, let's try something. Let's muscle test for that. So we muscle test. We said, yes, she had a really strong fear. So we did this little process to release the fear, the energetic fear. Okay. And she called me the next day. She went home. She never had a problem. First time in her life. Okay. And it was a little 5-minute thing on the way to do the real work we were going to do. Now, I'm not saying everything is simple. Okay. But that's the case. So fears and phobias are, can be dealt with by just looking at what's the energy. So there's, it's like, yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, but also because Larry has certificates all over his walls. And one
that
of
way I
them
don't
was,
have to paint the wall.
one of them was IBS.
Yeah. Well, IBS, that's irritable bowel syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. But, but what process was that? Because you do a lot for people with digestion. Because remember when I had that really tough time digesting food, and we had to do a bunch of stuff on that because I was just super stressed.
Okay. All right. So you've got irritable bowel syndrome, and which affects the body. Okay. You've also got irritable bowel disease, which are the same symptoms. Okay. But the problem is one has a pathology attached to it. Irritable bowel disease has a pathology attached to it. Irritable bowel, am I getting this right? Syndrome doesn't have a pathology attached to it. But the symptoms are very real because the mind believes that the symptoms have to be there. Okay. Now, anyone watching this as a doctor, that they're going to turn you off now. We just lost your audience. I guarantee it. Okay. But the reality is, and it's why medications don't work with irritable bowel syndrome, because it's not a disease. There's nothing to change. So when you start using processes like hypnosis, with that, hypnosis works very well, and you start to change that, you can shift those energetic. So this is my term, okay? You can change those energetic things that are causing the problem. And irritable bowel, I had a woman once, still client, for 20 years, only 30 years, had irritable bowel. And her doctor couldn't do anything with it. And she came to see me for something else. I can't even remember what it was now. And somehow I found this. I said, well, we could probably do something about that. And so we did it. It's not a one-stop deal. Okay. It's a procedure. It takes about 6 weeks. And we did that. And that's got to be about 12, 15 years ago. And she's never had a problem since. Okay. But she'd been to doctors and doing everything. They were getting tired of seeing her. Doctors hate irritable. Well, I'm going to get myself in trouble, but I'll say it anyway. They don't like irritable bowel syndrome because they can't do anything about it. It doesn't matter what they do. You know, it's like go home and just live with it. You know, and I've had that with one client where the doctor just said, go home or actually the woman that I learned about irritable bowel, how to do the process, she had it. She had fibromyalgia. She created 2 protocols, but her doctor finally said, just go home. I can't do anything for you. And she knew a bit about hypnosis, so she created some protocols that are still used today for dealing with those things. So it's a phenomenal, and all kinds of different illnesses and stuff like that, that using hypnosis and any energy-related processes. Tapping is that's all. We don't want to go down this road right now because we'll go crazy on it. But it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I've got a problem. Used to have a problem with my leg, and I just learned by doing a tapping protocol, just actually tapping on energy points, it would go away. And I had, in my case, a knee that was acceptable for knee replacement. And the doctor said, if you can hold on for a couple of years, it would be better because it only lasts for 10 or 20 years or whatever it is. I said, yeah, I can deal with the pain, no problem. And I've walked 2 Caminos on that leg.
And the Camino is how long? I was just going to say that.
900 kilometers.
That's right.
Wow.
And that was last. The year before last, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2 years.
3 years ago you did the first one.
Yeah,
and then
3
2
years
years
ago
you did the second one.
Did the second one, and I was supposed to do one last year, but COVID hit. So
Yeah.
I'm waiting for COVID to go back. It's the moment I can get back on the thing, I'll go back and do another one.
Yeah.
So it's just to say that, and not everything works for everyone all the time, okay? And I'm not trying to make it that this is all in your head, just get over it. It doesn't matter if it's real or if it's emotional or whatever it is. The physical symptoms, the pain, the suffering, it's all real, okay? And when people say, oh, it's just in your head, there's this tendency to say, well, it's not real, get over it. But it's not that easy, okay? When we have these things going on, so many of us have these challenges in our lives. And just to say, well, they'll go away doesn't work, But we have the power. Our bodies are just unbelievably powerful, okay? And they have they have the power to create it. They have the power to uncreate it, okay? And that's being a little broad, and I recognize that. And for people who might see this and say, well, 5 most often words in this room, but Larry, you don't understand whenever I'm in there, right?
Mm.
It's real, and it is. But there's a lot of it we have the power to make huge changes. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to dig in there because I had seen something on a show. And I don't know if this is reality or not. So I want to ask you. So I was watching Bling Empire. And on it, I think it's a reality show, so it's not really an actor. But anyways, so he had been adopted and couldn't find anything on his birth parents. It was really bothering him. So he went for hypnosis. Mm-hmm. And in it, I guess I assume he was looking for some information on, maybe he was hoping to get information on where he came from, like see if they could bring him back to a point where he could remember something. But what ended up happening was really they couldn't get too much out of it, but he did remember the general feeling surrounding being in the womb and after being born. And it was not a happy feeling. It was like the parent, they had given him up for adoption. So they were scared, confused, whatever, not happy feelings, which was quite traumatic for him. And so they kind of took him through a process of rewriting that story a bit. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't change the story, but they changed the feelings around it. I guess express this idea that, now him being an adult, he could share the wisdom of where he's come to that memory. And so it had shifted it and he walked away feeling a lot better. Is that something that can actually be done in real life? Is that?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. Because what it is, it's energy. So you're talking about a child. A friend of mine, Mia Kayla, works with babies in the womb. Okay, so a lot of the imprints that we have when we come out of the womb were imprinted while we were in the womb. People don't understand. So if you're in the mother's womb and there's a lot of violence and alcohol and stuff, they're going to come out with challenges. Okay, emotional challenges, some more than others. Okay, and again, what it is, it's all energy. So I bring it all back to energy. Is how I'm really simplifying this, but pick another word for it. But we have all of these experiences in vitro in the room, and they're there when we come out. They don't go away. Okay, why it's so important in childbirth, prior to childbirth too, is to talk to, people talk to the baby. Now, a lot of people think this is all woo-woo, and probably it is, and that's okay. But woo-woo is bad. Woo-woo is not bad, right? So that's the same thing as going through, in that case, what's the trauma, and how do we release the trauma? And there's lots of different ways to release trauma. Psychotherapy is really important in some things. Say doing energy work is important. Yeah.
I think that, Raquel, because I've done those processes. So yes, it's totally possible to go in, and some people call it reframing as well. Some people call it, like, there are different things that you can do, and there are different things that are right for you at different times. But as an adult, you can kind of go, and actually, if you read Getting the Love You Want that Tam has recommended in the past, a lot of it is about your best version of yourself going back to your other version of yourself and being like, okay, we can let that go now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not for us anymore now. Let's leave it. You become your own best friend, right? And I think that's part of a big part of what Larry does, what we've done, the work that we've done. I've gone so far as to do past life regression with Larry, and that's been incredible. And some people believe in it and some people don't, and not everything is for everyone. But I think,
what is that? Can you explain that?
Past life regression?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, we don't have the time.
There goes the curtain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're interested in past life regression, there's a really great book called Many Lives, Many Masters, which I quite enjoyed, that my older sister recommended to me. But it's, I've believed that we're souls, that we come back, and we're here, and we're energy. Energy can't be destroyed, right? So however you choose to believe in that is up to you. But with me, past life regression was about addressing maybe some fears that I couldn't access, that have come through a previous experience of some kind. And for me, that ended up being quite focused, because I'm open to those possibilities, right? So past life regression is one form of addressing addressing things that you feel but you can't understand, maybe, right? In various ways. And so, but my point is, what I realized is a lot of people spend a lot of time, like, I know Larry and I, we joke around a lot about going into various stages of woo-woo and being like, okay, we're gonna go here. But I say this more to people than I ever have. So many people don't believe in energy-based therapy, but everyone believes in Wi-Fi. And I'm like, okay, so you don't think that something that you can't see can be real, but Wi-Fi. And they're like, oh, but it's different. And I'm like, but Wi-Fi. And then if I just keep saying Wi-Fi, I think at some point, one of them is going to be like, oh, Wi-Fi. And we'll maybe understand that energy is really important. It's so, and us understanding it from a neural perspective, from a neuro-linguistic perspective, from a physical perspective, metaphysical perspective, all of the different perspectives. It's the marriage of all of those things that bring us from being binary thinking or mono thinking human beings to the complex souls that we were meant to be.
Well, it's kind of like quantum physics, right? No one in their right mind can understand quantum physics. Even the quantum physics people can't understand physics. Right? And I was listening to an interview once that of a quantum physics expert, one of the big things, and he's talking about things they know are there but they can't prove are there. And I'm thinking, okay, how do you? Okay, we know about we got these things named, although we've never seen them. We don't know what they are. We don't know what they do. We don't know where they came from. We don't know where they're going, but we know they're there. And so that's when I sit there and think, I don't get it. It was Krista Tippett was doing this interview one day. Now, anyone has ever listened to Krista Tippett, but she did some great interviews. And it was just, I don't even know how she got to ask the questions. And but what it did to me, the way he was explaining, it was just getting exactly what you were saying, that we don't have a clue, most of us, and even the experts don't have a clue of what's really going on. When we talk about black holes and we talk about how the universe was created, and we talk all about that stuff, is way, certainly for me, way beyond anything I can get my head around. But what I have come to believe is that I may not believe it, but I don't disbelieve it.
Right.
And I think when we can start to come at things from that perspective is far different than saying, no, I just don't believe it. It's not right. Just say, okay, I don't get it, but I don't disbelieve it. Okay. Is there life after death? I don't know, but I don't disbelieve it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that goes with, we're going into down some funny, what the heck? There we go. And, we're trying to squeeze this into a short period of time. But if we could really, and I put myself in this thing of not doing all we want to do, but if we could really tap into ourselves and really believe how absolutely awesomely powerful we are, there are no limitations. We've grown up with, our whole life has been limitations, from almost the time you come out of the womb. Don't do this, don't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. Or this is the right thing to do, or that's the wrong thing to do, or whatever, okay? And we buy into it. And as we buy into those things, it starts to change what we believe and how we function. And the real goal is to be able to let go of that and then go into the realm of possibility. Well, what if it really was possible to do? Okay, I know we can't do this. No, that's not possible. But what if it was possible? What would it look like then? And so, like you were talking earlier, Kristina, how do we imagine our own future? How do we create our own reality? And we have the capacity and the ability to create our reality. Sometimes we just need a little bit of help doing it.
And you call Larry and you say, Kristina and Raquel told me you're my guy, Larry. I'm ready to woo-woo.
I'm ready to woo-woo.
Maybe I may put that on my cards. Are you ready to woo-woo?
I think you should. That needs to be your ad.
For a good woo-woo experience, look up Larry,
Please call Larry for a woo-woo time. Oh, that's so great. You're going to get so many calls now. You're welcome.
But I think most people probably do. I would argue that most people do believe in energy. They just can't wrap their heads around manipulating energy. Yeah. Because if you think about it, everyone's had situations where they just had a bad vibe from someone, or someone's bad mood passed over to them, or they had this gut feeling that they needed to check up on a friend, or like all of those subconsciousness, all of those things are energetic and you're tapping into those.
Yeah.
But the idea of manipulating it, I think, is something that we haven't really been conditioned into like understanding and talking about openly.
Well, I think there are also a lot of people who just tell you that that's random. They'll just subscribe to it, the universe being in full chaos. Is that not nihilism? Where everything just doesn't have any purpose? It's like, well, that happened. Oh yeah, well, yeah. It's like that. Where did I hear that? With
nothing matters.
Yeah. But the 12 monkeys. How long would it take 12 monkeys to type the complete works of Shakespeare? What's that story? Can't remember. And they can't do it. I don't know what my point was. Never mind.
I've never heard that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard it, but you got it backwards. I think they I don't know. Anyway,
how long would it take for them to write the complete works of Shakespeare? It was trying to prove that there's infinite possibilities, or there's limited possibilities. I don't know. Anyway, something happened with monkeys and typewriters, and all I remember is
I just like the 100th monkey syndrome.
What's that?
That when we get enough change, everything changes. You never heard the 100th monkeys?
Oh, that's the pandemic.
Well, yeah, but the 100th monkeys. Sometimes. But basically, a monkey started washing his food. Okay, And then another monkey saw that and decided to wash their food. And when the 100th monkey started, all of a sudden monkeys all over the world started washing their food. Doing it very badly. So anyone that actually knows the real story, don't get too upset. The concept is when you get enough critical mass, everything happens. Okay.
Right.
And so that's almost a quantum physics thing too. But I like the monkey story.
Very
Okay.
nice. Well, that's
But
a good
that's
way
what
to
happens.
end it on misinformation on all of our parts. Good job. Yep. So if you are ready for having, I just did my last hypnotherapy. I was telling Larry was our magical thinking one, because I was like, I just feel like I need a little pick me up, how do I think magically about what I want to do and create that space. So I hope this has been useful for all of you out there listening to us today, debunking the myths around hypnotherapy, inserting some new magic things that you may or may not want to subscribe to, like Wi-Fi. I mean, it's not real. Can't see it, not there. So Larry, thank you so much for spending all this time with us today.
Well, thanks. It's been great. It's been a lot of fun. Got something out of it other than the fact that we had fun with each other. Seeing this? Oh, I forgot about that. I thought just us.
Yes. Well, we'll have many more brunches, I'm sure. And I'll be speaking to you in 2 days to ramble at you for an extended period of time, as usual.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Thanks, Larry. Bye.
All right. You're welcome. Bye.
Thanks for listening, bombshells. In order to continue to elevate, subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell so you can get notified every time we have a new badass brunch. Until next time, stay focused, fierce, and fabulous.